What if everything you think that you know about human nature is backwards? You're wrong. And the very mechanisms that you rely on for happiness are actually the source of your suffering. Well, over the past 3 days, we've journeyed through 9 profound teachings from Gurdjieff's cosmic masterpiece, Beelzebub's Tales, to his grandson. We've learned to work with universal forces, embrace cosmic responsibility, ask authentic questions. Today, or right now, I want to reveal 3 of the most shocking truths about why human beings, despite having all the same potential as conscious beings throughout the universe, remain trapped in patterns that prevent them from becoming who they truly are. Now, this is the 10th teaching, the origin of human dysfunction. In the 10th chapter of Beelzebub's tale, we learn the most shocking truth about human existence. Initially, Earth beings were developing normally towards objective consciousness, just like 3-brained beings throughout the universe. For one cosmic year, everything proceeded according to natural order, and humans were beginning to crystallize the data necessary for genuine reason and awareness. But then something unprecedented happened. A cosmic commission, fearing that humans might prematurely understand their true purpose and rebel against their role in maintaining cosmic stability, made a fateful decision. They implanted a special organ at the base of the human spinal column called the Kunda buffer organ. This organ was designed with 2 specific functions. First, it made humans perceive reality upside down, backwards, from how things actually are. Second, it caused every repeated impression from outside to crystallize data that would generate sensations of pleasure and enjoyment, creating an addiction to the very experience that reinforced distorted perceptions. Now think about this carefully. The cosmic authorities were afraid that if humans understood their true situation, they would choose to destroy themselves rather than continue serving a purpose that they never consciously agreed to. So they created a psychological mechanism, the psychological mechanism that would keep humans content with illusions while preventing them from seeing reality clearly. 3 cosmic years later, when the cosmic danger had passed, a 3rd commission descended and destroyed the Kunda buffer organ. But here's the tragic part. The consequences of its properties had already become crystallized in human beings and continued to affect them long after the organ itself was removed. This explains why humans continue to suffer from distorted perceptions of reality, addiction to pleasure, and comfort seeking, and an inability to see their true cosmic purpose, as well as mechanical unconscious behavior patterns. Modern neuroscience validates this understanding through research on cognitive distortions, addiction pathways, and the brain's tendency towards homeostasis and familiar patterns. We see evidence of the crystallized Kunda buffer consequences everywhere in contemporary life. People chase pleasures that ultimately make them miserable. We interpret reality through filters of past conditioning rather than seeing what's actually happening. We remain unconscious to our true potential while being perfectly content with mechanical existence. Social media algorithms exploit these same Kunda buffer patterns, keeping us scrolling through content that triggers automatic pleasure responses while distorting our perceptions of reality. Consumer culture promises happiness through accumulation, hoarding, feeding the addiction to respond to and having you respond to repeated pleasurable impressions. Political discourse operates through emotional manipulation rather than rational analysis, keeping us reactive rather than conscious. But understanding the cosmic origin of these patterns provides hope. If they were created by specific causes, they can potentially be undone through conscious work and understanding. You're not inherently flawed or broken. You're dealing with the crystallized consequences of a cosmic intervention that was never meant to be permanent. Now, the 11th teaching, the psychology of wounded pride, which is chapter 11 in the Tales, this provides or reveals one of the most absurd yet universal aspects of human psychology, which is our extreme sensitivity to perceived insults and the elaborate rituals that we create to process wounded pride. Beelzebub fears what humans would do to his grandson if they learned he had called them slugs, describing in hilarious detail the solemn councils, character assassination trials, and anathema ceremonies that they would organize. This chapter demonstrates how humans consistently respond to minor provocations with dramatically disproportionate reactions. A causal nickname from a distant being becomes grounds for elaborate councils, trials, and curse rituals involving multiple levels of bureaucratic authority. The anathema process reveals several crucial psychological mechanisms. When humans cannot take direct action against those who have offended them, they create elaborate rituals. They give them the illusion of power and control. Special officials conduct ceremonies wishing for the offender to lose their horns, have their hair turn prematurely gray, have their food turn into coffin nails, or have their future spouse's tongue become 3 times its normal size. This ritualized cursing serves important psychological functions. It provides a sense of agency when direct action is impossible. It creates group solidarity through shared condemnation. It satisfies the need for revenge without requiring actual confrontation. It transforms helpless rage into organized ceremonial action. But the deeper issue is the fragility of identity that these reactions reveal. The extreme sensitivity to being called names suggests that human self-image is constructed on very unstable foundations. People require elaborate social ceremonies to confirm that they have been wronged and deserve sympathy, rather than simply dealing with the hurt feelings internally. Modern cancel culture operates according to these same psychological principles. Someone makes a statement that offends a group, triggering elaborate social media trails involving character assassinations and ritualized condemnation by people who have no direct connection to the original offense. The lack of proportionality is striking. A causal comment or old social media post becomes grounds for destroying someone's career and reputation. The inability to distinguish between accidental offense and deliberate insult, between context and content, reveals the mechanical nature of these responses. Research on affective dysregulation confirms that emotional reactivity often distorts perception of reality. When people are triggered emotionally, they literally cannot see situations accurately. Their hurt feelings become the only reality that matters, regardless of intent, regardless of context, or proportionality. But recognizing these patterns in yourself gives you tremendous power. When you feel that familiar surge of wounded pride, that sense of being insulted or disrespected, you can pause and ask, is my reaction proportionate to what's actually happened here? Am I seeing this situation clearly, or am I filtering it through emotional reactivity? What would happen if I simply let this go rather than organizing a psychological anathema ceremony? Now, the 12th teaching, which is the illusion of modern scholarship, is a chapter that presents a brilliant analysis of how contemporary intellectual culture operates through mechanical copying rather than original thinking. A modern writer discovers an ancient manuscript in his library, and without understanding its true nature or context, publishes a book claiming to have recovered lost wisdom. Well, this triggers an academic controversy that splits the intellectual community into opposing camps. Some scholars support the writer's interpretation, while others attack it. But neither side possesses the understanding necessary to evaluate the material accurately. What begins as scholarly disagreement gradually escalates into personal animosity, professional rivalry, and institutional conflict. The chapter reveals how academic controversies often have little to do with genuine pursuit of truth and much to do with the mechanical psychological reactions. Wounded pride, professional competition, territorial disputes, and the need to be right at any cost drive the debate rather than authentic curiosity about understanding. As the controversy spreads, more scholars become involved, each adding their own interpretation and complicating the discussion further. What began as a question about one manuscript becomes a battleground for numerous competing theories, none of which demonstrate genuine understanding. The scholars involved believe they are contributing to knowledge, yet their mechanical methods of coping or of copying and repeating, recombining, and arguing actually multiply confusion. The more elaborate the scholarly apparatus becomes, the more disconnected it grows from any authentic understanding. Modern educational systems operate according to these same principles. Students learn to ask only approved questions and give answers that they think teachers want to hear, rather than following genuine curiosity. Academic success becomes a measure of conformity rather than understanding. The publish or the perish mentality forces researchers to produce new content, whether or not they have genuine insights to share. Academic journals filled with papers that recombine existing ideas into new configurations without advancing actual understanding. Social media amplifies these problems exponentially. People share articles and opinions based on headlines rather than careful analysis. Complex issues get reduced to simplistic tribal positions. Everyone becomes an expert on topics that they've never seriously studied. But the chapter here also reveals the contrast between mechanical scholarship and authentic understanding. True knowledge emerges from direct experience, conscious effort, and genuine inner work rather than from manipulating existing information. The tragedy is that the waste of human intellectual capacity is occurring. These scholars involved in these controversies possess considerable intelligence and energy, yet they apply these gifts to fundamentally futile activities that just move them further from understanding the truth. So to bring it all together, the complete diagnosis that Gurdjieff presents here in these 3 chapters provides a comprehensive analysis of the human condition. Chapter 10 explains the cosmic origins of human dysfunction through the Kunda buffer organ and its persistent consequences. Chapter 11 demonstrates the psychological mechanisms through which humans perpetuate their own suffering. Chapter 12 reveals how intellectual culture itself can become a vehicle for transmitting confusion rather than understanding. Together, they establish how the individual psychological dysfunction manifests in social dynamics and cultural institutions, creating self-perpetuating systems that maintain human beings in states of unconsciousness despite their potential for development. But understanding these patterns is just the first step toward transcending them. When you recognize the kind of buffer consequences operating in your own life, you can begin to work consciously against distorted perception and pleasure-seeking addiction. When you catch yourself in wounded pride reactions, you can choose proportional responses rather than an elaborate psychological revenge fantasy. When you encounter mechanical scholarship, you can discriminate between authentic wisdom and intellectual recycling, the repeating that goes on today. The cosmic intervention that created these problems for us was intended to be temporary, but the psychological patterns that it established have become self-perpetuating. However, what was created by specific causes can potentially be undone through understanding and through conscious work. This requires what Gurdjieff called conscious suffering, the willingness to see your mechanical patterns without immediately trying to fix or justify them. It requires conscious labor, the sustained effort to work against these three crystallized consequences rather than being driven by them. Most importantly, it requires the recognition that your current way of functioning, no matter how familiar or comfortable, is not who you actually are. Beneath all the Kunda buffer consequences, beneath all the wounded pride reactions, beneath the mechanical thinking, your authentic potential remains intact. The question isn't whether you have the capacity for genuine consciousness. The question is whether you're willing to work against the forces that prevent its development. Are you ready to question perceptions that seem obviously true but might be upside down? Are you willing to examine your pleasure-seeking patterns and where they lead? Can you distinguish between authentic understanding and sophisticated confusion? Well, these aren't philosophical abstractions. These are practical principles that can transform how you approach every situation in your daily life. When you recognize that your first impressions of any situation might be backwards due to crystallized Kunda buffer consequences, you naturally become more curious and less reactive. When you understand that your immediate emotional responses might be disproportionate due to wounded pride patterns, you can pause and choose more conscious responses. When you discriminate between mechanical scholarship and authentic understanding, you stop being manipulated by impressive sounding expertise that lacks genuine wisdom. You become more interested in what actually works than in what sounds intellectually sophisticated. The cosmic purpose for which you exist remains the same, regardless of these dysfunctional patterns. But fulfilling that purpose consciously rather than mechanically requires understanding and working against the specific obstacles that prevent conscious development. You have the same fundamental free brain structure as conscious beings throughout the universe have. The only difference is these crystallized consequences that can be gradually dissolved through sustained conscious work. The potential for objective consciousness, authentic emotion, and harmonious action exist within you right now, waiting to be actualized through genuine effort. The tools are available. The understanding is clearer than ever. The cosmic support that exists For those willing to do the real work of becoming conscious rather than remaining content with mechanical existence, disguised as normal human life. But like everything else in this cosmic order, conscious development requires conscious effort applied intelligently over time. No one can do this work for you, but you don't have to do it alone. Find others who are serious about consciousness rather than just comfort. Study teachings that point toward practical work rather than philosophical speculation. Most importantly, begin the daily practice of observing your own mechanical patterns without judgment. The universe has been preparing for your conscious participation in cosmic purpose for billions of years. The question is whether you're ready to move beyond the crystallized consequences of ancient interventions and discover who you actually are beneath all the conditioning. The choice remains yours, but now you understand what you're choosing between. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.